Here is something that most people don't think about when deciding on spacing their kids or having gaps between kids. Hey everyone, my name is Marla and I am a mom of four, and I have, I think, the best experience or the best insights because I had both experiences. I had 3 kids under 3, so 3 kids together, back to back, under 3 years of age, so no gap at all. So I had that one experience, and then I had a 5.5-year gap, and then I had another baby. So I had the gap and I had no gap. And I think that because of that, I have a good idea of both sides. I didn't just have one kid and then a gap and then another. I had a bunch together and then a gap. So I have both a good idea of how both situations are and what I see as something that's really challenging or beneficial in terms of the gap. And that's what I wanted to share today because I get so many questions. People ask me all the time in my comments, do you love having an age gap with your kids, or would you prefer them all close together? So how does that work for you? I made a whole video on this, so I'm going to link it up here, talking about the gap in general, but I wanted to share one thing that most people don't think about, and I did not think about when planning another child and how you want to space them. And I kind of wish I did, because it would have probably changed things up a little bit for us. So here we go. I had my first 3 kids, and then because the gap was so big, I had really severe complications. I should back up a step. Really severe complications with my first 3, with the pregnancy and the labor and the postpartum. Very severe. So it got me after I had my third. I was like, I had prolapse and other really big issues. I was like, I cannot have kids right now. I need to just now stop and focus on healing and taking care of the 3 kids that I already have. So that was what elicited a gap. Initially, I was planning on maybe no more kids. I was so overwhelmed and tired, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. After a few years, I was like, I feel better. I feel great. We're okay financially. We can have another one. So that's where the gap came from. It wasn't something that I planned initially. It was just, I need to stop because I'm just not feeling well. I have to recover. And so when I had my first 3, they were so close together, but then the gap was so big because I needed such a big time to heal. That's where that 5.5-year gap came from. So again, keep in mind that the gap obviously for me might be a bit larger. And most people, when they choose to space kids, they're spacing maybe 2 or 3 years. So my experience is that bigger gap, but I still have some good insights. And one thing that I didn't think about, which I thought about a lot of things, one thing I didn't think about, and I want to share that, is the fact that when you have a gap between kids, if you have a cluster of kids or one even, and then you have a gap and then you have another one, when you have another one, it's like you just have one child. And here's what I mean. When I had my first son, my very first baby ever, everything was on me. So when he wanted to play, I had to sit with him and play. He had no other siblings. I was around, and that's how it is. When you have a child, when you have one only, you are their playmate. So you're sitting on the ground with them, you're playing, you're spending more time with them. Naturally, as you have more children, they play together and you start to get to be a little bit more hands-off. Now, it's not to say that you never play with the kids, of course. And I always have that sit on the ground time and playing with them, but you do it a little bit less, and it's really nice. I'm gonna be honest, than having to always just be their only friend for the most part when they're home. It's nice when you have more kids that they start to play with each other. And they really do. So my first 3, until I had my first son, then as the other one was born and he got a little bit old enough to start understanding things, he started playing with my son. And then my daughter came along a few months after that, and they all just meshed together and just were like best friends. And now my oldest is 10, and then I have an 8 and a 7-year-old. The 8 and 7-year-old are like this. The 10-year-old they're clashing a bit now. He's clashing with his brother and sister because he's at this age where he's like kind of out of what they want to be doing still. But overall, they're still amazing friends, and they're like always together. When I had the gap and then had my youngest, who is now 2, he is like I had one kid again. He is always with me. We sit on the ground and we play together. And with my older kids, they don't want to be stacking blocks. They don't want to be playing the baby games and watching the baby shows that he wants. Now they do it because they're angels, and I honestly have the best kids, and they love to help me out, but they also are obsessed with their brother. So they will go up to him and they're like playing the baby stuff. But at some point they're like, we're tired, Mom, and we want to go do our own thing. And I don't want to stop them because I want them to have a childhood where they got to explore and enjoy and not felt like they were babysitters. So it's mostly still me sitting with him and playing, and it's really exhausting because now I'm older than I was before, more than 10 years older, but I also have a full-time business. I've got 4 kids instead of 1, so we're making huge meals and lots more cleaning. So it's so different than having 1. And I feel like I'm a single child again because of the amount of energy that I have to give the baby. So what I started thinking about was like, if the gap was much smaller, if I had him way closer to the others, they would all be in a similar age, in a similar state in life, in a similar like a preference for toys, for TV shows, for games. You know, they kind of just blend together. You know, within a few years, they're very similar in what they enjoy. But because there is that gap, he's now like completely nowhere near what they like. And so that has been the biggest challenge for me. I'm like, guys, do you want to play with your brother? And they're like, oh, he's so boring. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And for him, the hardest part of all this is he wants to do what they're doing. So he sees them riding bikes or skateboards, and he starts having tantrums if he can't get on a bike or a skateboard. And we're like, no, it's not safe. Like, you're too small. You don't know how to do it. He doesn't understand it, and he just gets angry. Or if he sees them eating something he can't eat because they're older, he gets upset. Or if he sees them staying up later than he is, he gets upset. And it's all these things I started realizing, like, he is watching his older siblings. He wants to be like them, but he's a baby. They're so much older than him that they're like way at a different, you know, again, state in life or whatever the term is. And so it's a lot of battles. We spend most of our day telling him no because he wants to do what they're doing and he can't. And the other part of the day, me just trying to entertain him because he's solo. And so when I think back and I think about the gap, I do kind of wish I smushed them all together and just dealt with it. Had my 4 kids that I wanted, you know, without the gap, because then they would all be growing up at the same time and on the same, you know, they would have the same likes and dislikes and, you know, stuff like that. So that was hard with the gap. And there's some blessings, like some pros for sure and some cons. And we weighed the pros and cons at the time the best we could, given the fact that we never went through it. And it seemed like, oh, it's a good idea to have a gap and wait. Now when I'm in it, I'm so tired and I'm thinking like I should have just got all these phases over with all at once. It would have been a lot easier for us. The one biggest perk with the gap for us would be the fact that the older kids do help so much. They do give me like a good few minutes of babysitting time so I can get some stuff done around the house and I don't have to be chasing him. But still, if I were to put all the pros and cons now that I had a gap, there are a lot more cons to a gap, in my opinion, than pros. I touch on it in my other video, but it really is something that you don't really know until you go through it and just restarting everything and then just being like, you have all these older kids now. And the one thing, sorry, I'm all over the place. The one thing that I really feel bad about is my older kids always feel like they only get one of either me or my husband, not both. And the reason is like they want to go to on roller coasters. They want to go do things that are for older kids. They want to go hiking and stuff that the baby can't do yet. And so one of us is always staying with the baby. And so that we're never together doing what they want to do because he's not at that level. Whereas if we had them all kind of closer together, we'd all be on the same level now. It's very different. We want to play a family game. He's very much in the stage of knocking all the pieces off and messing up the game. Even if we play on a table, he'll just climb and do that. So my husband and the kids will go play, or I'll play with the kids and one with the baby. So it's harder now because we're split up more. One always has to be with the crazy little human who's like just so destructive. So the kids feel more and they're always like, can we go camping this year? And I'm like, it's too hard with the baby or, you know, whatever. And it's just, they kind of feel like he's ruined their life, which is sad, but they have kind of mentioned it a couple times, like when they're super frustrated because he keeps wrecking their games, or, you know, we keep saying no to certain things because the baby, they're just like, oh, he's like ruined our life. And then they like right away, they're like, I'm sorry, we love you. But like, I know as a kid, they don't mean it, but it's so hard for them to just have to go through that. But on his end, he is so blessed because he has 3 siblings who are obsessed with him, and I want to film their interactions sometimes because they are so like all day they're kissing him and they're like, we love you, and they're squishing him and they take such good care of him. Especially my daughter Lily, she's like a little mom to him and she holds his hand everywhere. She knows exactly what he needs. It's so sweet to watch that. So long story short, there's pros, there's cons. I wanted to share this specific one of like, it's like you have one child again when you have a gap versus a bunch of kids, and not in a good way. It's like very challenging because you are now their friend. You're playing with them more, you're doing those kinds of things. So I hope that this made sense. I hope it wasn't confusing. If you guys have any questions about the age gap, let me know in the comments below. I feel like I've got some good expertise now that I have 4 kids and kind of, you know, both ends of the spectrum, a bunch of kids together and then a gap. So I hope you guys found this video helpful and informative and that you guys are doing well, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.